The power of continuous movement is something that nature teaches us so much of. And isn't it incredibly powerful? Hey, it's Rishi Patel, founder of Selling in Alignment, where I work with coaches and consultants to reprice and package their services so they can discover and live their wider purpose. And I'm really excited about this topic today. Why am I excited about this topic? Because it's one of those topics where we really get so much from nature. We really get so much inspiration from what nature is about. And so there is a power inside of that and understanding that and really looking at that. And so one of the first things I want to talk about is kind of this constant movement. You know, one of the things that we observe about nature is that it's always moving. Look at a tree, it moves with the wind. Look at a rock, even a rock, which is something you may think doesn't move, erodes over time because of the wind or the water or something that brushes up against it. Look at animals, look at plants, look at look at the sun, look at the moon. It's all constantly moving. Every single thing inside of nature is constantly moving. And what does that teach us? What does that tell us? Regardless of what comes up, we also keep moving. And isn't that a completely different take on the idea of failure? Nature doesn't feel like it fails. Nature just keeps nurturing and thriving. And that's another aspect of nature that we can really look at as well, is this whole idea of nurture. And first of all, look at these two words. Aren't they incredibly intrinsically close together, even in terms of spelling? Nature and nurture. When we nurture something, we really get to have it feel and become its best. And in such a way, question for you all, how do we nurture ourselves? And how much time and effort and energy are we looking at in terms of nurturing ourselves? If we're running a coaching business, we can take all of these lessons and apply them into our everyday lives. If you're running a coaching business, you're a coach, consultant, service provider, for example, providing some kind of service out there. One of the things that we'll do a lot of is maybe, especially if we're solopreneurs, is look after the marketing, the sales. We'll be looking after admin, finance. We'll be looking after business processes, IT. All of these responsibilities come under us. And at the same time, we're wearing all these hats. Are we nurturing ourselves to get the very best for our clients, to get the very best for our business as an entity, to get the very best growth and to feel that thrivingness? And you know, this idea is so powerful because it teaches us about resilience. And there's something about persistence and resilience inside of nature. Let me give you an example of that. Let's say we take a seed. Let's say the seed is, I don't know, to grow some beautiful flowers, right? Think beautiful flowers, tulips or roses. You plant these seeds in the ground, or you have a clipping of a rose plant, for example, and you plant it, you dig the soil out, you put the actual soil, the seed inside, you put the actual cutting of the plant, if it's a cutting, inside, and you recover it. You recover the roots, you recover them with the soil. And so you've already set up its environment. Environment is also incredibly powerful. Now, you give it that water that it needs. It's exposed to the sun, which comes down on it. In all of these ways, it gets nurtured. Nature is nurtured. And when nature is nurtured, it thrives. Now, if we nurture our nature as service providers, as beings who are of service to others, guess what we experience is that thrivingness as well. That's powerful. And so have a look at the power of nature, because regardless of what happens in nature, nature continues to move. It continues to grow as well. There's a growth around nature. And so this is very, very powerful. If it's a seed that was planted inside the ground and you put the soil on, you watered it, what happens is that leaf starts to form out of the soil. It pushes up, the stem pushes up through the soil and starts to strive for the sun. Isn't that something that teaching us about persistence and resilience? Look at nature and the lessons that it's teaching us about how we can show up in the world. There's an incredible amount of power there. So I really want us all to really start to understand this and think about how can we show up with more resilience inside of our coaching business? How can we have that mindset of, you know what, I went and spoke to that client, they said no. And I'm not going to add any kind of meaning on that other than, the fact that they said no, and now I'm going to talk to more people. How do we park aside that fear of rejection? Because nature doesn't experience a fear of rejection. It just is. It's being nature. And it's being its nature. So there's something in and around that as well. And there's a lot of wordplay here because nature can obviously have multiple connotations to it. So first of all, when I say nature, the context with which I mean it is the wildlife, the plants, the trees, the soil, the ground, all of the things that are around us in the sun, the moon, all of these natural elements. Nature can also have a context in meaning of our personal nature. What are we about? And if we're showing up in our business as service providers, there's a very good chance that that's our thing. That's our way of contributing back to the world. And so we can nurture our nature just the way we nurture nature by watering it, by giving it sunlight, by talking to it perhaps. I have been given a gift of a money plant which I've put into my room, and I water it and I even talk to the plant. And here's the thing, I talk to the plant in a way in which it can be experiencing nurturing. It's nature experiencing nurturing because I water it. I have put it in a good location. It's got the right kinds of conditions to grow. I even talk to the plant and tell it how amazing it is. And yes, it feels a little strange. And at the same time, plants are living things. And like us, they need that nurturing and encouragement. And it really works to do that. And so that got me thinking, how often do we have that self-talk for ourselves? How often do we get out there in the world and talk to ourselves in the way in which we're thriving and we can nurture our own nature? And how many environments like that have we surrounded ourselves in as well? Or is it that our environment is not being conducive to our growth? And that's something to look at as well. So nature just continues to beautifully grow, beautifully thrive, beautifully just show up. And it has this powerful adaptability as well. Have you noticed, for example, if you take the idea of a chameleon, and a chameleon, it's probably an intention Monday in itself. There's so much depth to it. But a chameleon is obviously famous for camouflaging. And so what it does is it adapts to its environment. Now, how can we use that inside of our business, inside of everyday life? Well, if something comes up where a certain marketing strategy stops working in our business, or we have a slow period, how can we then adapt to that? How can we then go ahead and look at, okay, you know what, we're going to go through this slow period here, and that's okay, and this is what we're going to put in place instead. We're going to do a little bit of work on the business so that when we get back into this season, then we can really hit the ground running and have a big spike in revenues and sales. And so that's a way in which we can adapt. Can we do what the chameleon does, which is camouflage, adapt to its surroundings? And so there is this whole idea of nature working in a smarter way, not necessarily in a harder way. See, it's not hard for the chameleon to change that camouflage into its environment. In fact, it's very intelligent in the way in which it does that. It's working smarter and not harder. And it's inside of nature, it's a part of nature, and it's giving us a beautiful example, a demonstration of how there's an effortlessness, and yet it's still so powerful. That creates a very powerful impact because that stops predators potentially from killing that particular chameleon. There's a lot of power there. And if we look, for example, at desert plants, one of the things that I was doing a little research on was cactus. So, and I think cactus, the term is actually cacti when you talk about more than one. So cacti have this adaptability to survive in these arid environments. They grow in deserts. And obviously they store water inside thick, fleshy stems. And I didn't know that until I started looking to that. And interestingly, look at how intelligent nature is. It knows that it needs to store that water because it doesn't know when it will next get that water, for example. So it's drawing that water from wherever it's drawing it from and storing it for when it needs it the most. And again, there's something there about adapting to our environment and making the very best of what we have, remaining grateful for all of the things that are going well. So you can see there are so many things inside of nature that really just teach us how we can go ahead, adapt, how we keep moving, how we can keep growing, and how we can just completely reframe the idea of failure. That's it from me. Until the next time, keep selling in alignment.